Welcome to The Shield Within. The issues discussed on the Shield Within podcast do not reflect the opinions of any specific agency. They are the views of the host and the guest. Any persons discussed may be fictional for comedic purposes only. This podcast is rated explicit and listener discretion is advised. Listening to The Shield Within may trigger repressed or suppressed memories or experiences. Please contact a mental health professional at your earliest convenience. It's time for the chaos to cease.
Time to open yourself to peace.
From the hours you've put in.
To the next shift you begin.
From the endless pursuit of release.
That finds the worst unleashed.
Transform the ugly into a win.
Get to know your shield within.
Welcome to The Shield Within.
Good evening.
I'm going to use my buzzword, David.
Okay.
Super excited.
All right, man.
We have a guest tonight. Actually, we have two people in the studio. Mm-hmm. One of us is chicken shit. Won't get on the mic, but we have a great guest. I've been really looking forward to her being here. The one, the only, Vickie Martin.
Good evening, Vickie.
Hello.
There she is. Yes, first time on the microphone, right?
It is.
Are you nervous?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Just consider you talking to a very large auditorium of people. No pressure.
I'll bring out the college karaoke.
Yeah, there you go. Only a couple of thousand people listen to us.
I like that.
But anyway, since you've can't talk right now. Since you've dialed in, listener, you're listening to The Shield Within. So let's do a little bit of business here before we get going. If you're into Facebook, and we know you are, stop our Facebook page and Facebook.com/The Shield Within. You can see our smiling faces on there. Give us a like and comment. Also, our recently redone website. Yes, if you're going there, you can see all of our smiling faces and Hedgehog Donnie. It's www.theshieldwithin.com. Here's some Hedgehog Donnie. You probably wonder what it is. He's right there.
I would have been good not seeing that back there. Just kidding.
Vickie's like, what in the world have I got myself into? Or if you were in need, this is the perfect episode. If you're a first responder out there and you're like, man, my life is fucked. I need someone to un-F it, right? Yeah. So you can go to lessonslearnedcoaching.com and you can talk to Mr. Dr. David himself, or better yet, with this episode, Vickie's also working, right? And you can go by her place, not her Facebook page, which is Facebook Martin Counseling and Consultation. Facebook /Martin Counseling and Consultation, and say hello. So, Dr. David, everyone loves to listen to you talk and not me, so I'm going to hand the helm over.
Well, I'm sure that we'll all three be contributing.
Yes.
Greg may end up contributing as well.
I will, Dr. Dave.
Yeah.
All right. Well, first of all, it is a real pleasure to meet you. We do indeed have a number of people in common in our lives, some more close than others. And I've heard wonderful things about you. And I was really delighted to hear that you had a private practice, because that gives me some people to refer to. And because there's just not that many EMDR people around. And by the time our episodes are done this evening, a lot of people are going to know Vickie Martin's available to do therapy, EMDR work. And yeah, exactly. And I want that shine a little light on your work, my dear. So I think I'm looking forward to this. I don't know jack shit about you, okay? So let's start with, where did you grow up around here?
Dark County.
Dark County, okay. Mm-hmm. So you graduated from high school in Dark County?
Yes.
Okay. So you're in 10th, 11th grades. Did you know you're going to end up being a therapist?
So, interesting story, yes. I've always kind of been drawn to it. I actually did a job shadow my senior year in high school with a case manager at the local mental health clinic.
Yeah.
And now I supervise that case manager.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of tell her if she hates me as a supervisor, it's her fault that I'm even here.
That's right.
So yeah, at kind of an early age, I knew that I wanted to do something in this field.
Do you have a memory of what drew you to it in the first place?
Not really. I mean, I just kind of, like I said, just kind of felt drawn to I think we all go into the field to help people. That's kind of what we want to do. And so, yeah, that's
Where'd
what
you
I
go
try
to
to do.
college?
So my undergrad, I went to Wilmington College.
Wilmington.
Really small school, Quaker school.
Yeah.
And then my grad school was Wright State. So
Wright State.
local.
Very good. Very good. What was Wilmington like?
Wilmington was small, and it's a liberal arts school. So we called all of our professors by their first names. Our professors would show up at the frat parties, so it was a pretty good time.
Did you feel good about your education you got?
Yeah, I mean, there was, it was a good experience for me personally, coming from a small town, going to a small school.
Right.
It was a good fit.
Very good.
Yeah.
Graduate school the same? Did it feel good to you there?
Yeah.
Excellent. Don't know too much. I've had a number of folks that I've worked with that have graduated from Wright State, but not really that many I've known that well. So, and I had a couple of folks that I worked with at the Mental Health Center a long time ago in Miami County had gone through the PsyD program at Wright State, and I actually knew them a little bit more. But so you've now been out of graduate school. How long?
The first time or the second time?
Ooh, okay.
Good question.
Yeah. So the first time I went to school was right out of undergrad. So I got my undergrad and I double majored in psychology and social work with a minor in criminal justice.
Wow. Okay.
The first time I went to graduate school, my program was counseling exceptional children.
Wow.
Was Captain Fabulous on that?
I cannot disclose who I work with.
Thank you.
And so that particular program actually did not at that time have enough credit hours for me to actually go on for the professional clinical counselor license. But back then I was ready to be done with school.
Yes.
I thought, I don't need it. I've got my bachelor's in social work, had my social work license, and then I got in the real world and realized that I really did need it.
Whoops.
So I went back and took kind of the bridge classes that I needed to do the licensure, and got my master's in school counseling. Because at one point I thought, well, maybe I'll work in the schools.
Guidance counselor,
But, I think my sassiness may not work as well in a school as it might in other settings.
Gotcha.
So
the schools are could use you then.
yeah. Oh yeah. I would have loved schools. I don't know they would always have loved me.
Right.
But yeah. So
Very good. Very good. A little bit about your day job. What do you do now?
So I work full time as a clinical director and a crisis director, which means I supervise all of our clinical programming, basically our therapists, and then I supervise our crisis team. Our crisis team has a hotline, crisis hotline, and we have a team of therapists that go out to the jails and the hospitals and work with people that there's some kind of a safety concern with.
Okay. Okay. The crisis hotline. I'm real curious. I totally forgot about the crisis hotline. How much business does that get?
It gets quite a bit. I mean, obviously we're the Tri-County, so we serve Dark, Miami, and Shelby counties, but we get calls from all over.
Okay.
So there's quite a bit of calls that come in, and our team's on the other line to provide whatever the support and the resources that the person might need.
Do you use volunteers for that, or is it all professionals? How's that work now?
They're all paid staff now.
All paid staff. Okay. Okay. Back in the day, it was otherwise,
Yeah.
And that's where I started, was on a crisis hotline as a volunteer.
Okay.
That's what my entry into the field was, and I really found it incredibly rewarding. I absolutely love doing it. But it's good to hear that that's available, and that's one of the things that maybe we can do here is promote that a little bit in the use of that, because sometimes first responders can't reach their friend or their therapist or family member, somebody they can disclose to. And having the crisis hotline be somewhat a group of people that are paid to listen to wherever you're at, man. Whatever you're going through, they listen. The crisis hotline has people to listen. That's a really big deal. But as Vickie's saying, there's also services that they can be connected to. And the crisis hotline then becomes kind of a portal into the whole mental health set of services in the region. That's really good to know. Okay, clinical director, crisis intervention, recovery wellness. You see general population at the Recovery Wellness Center.
Yeah.
Drug and alcohol too?
Yeah, we're a dual agency.
Dual agency, okay, very good. So in an average week, just there, how many hours do you put in?
Let's go with 40 hours a week.
Well put. You get home on a Thursday evening, and then you've got hours at your office.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about your office. As you know, I've been referring to you, several people so far, and there's more coming, I'm sure. So I feel very comfortable referring anybody to you in general, and especially comfortable referring first responders. The gentleman that I have referred to that I know you're seeing is very happy with the services that you're delivering to him. So let's talk about how somebody that might be listening could become your client. So I'm guessing if it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're still at your day job, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I call your number and I get a voicemail kind of thing, right? So I leave you a voicemail, and then what happens?
So I do try to respond to all messages within 24 hours. Usually it's quicker than that, but I have the little catchphrase on my voicemail, I'll get back with you within 24 hours, but usually it's that evening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
very good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. So I call, and you get my voicemail, and you call me back, and we talk, and I say, okay, I'm a first responder, and I'm going through A, B, and C, and I'd like to make an appointment. How long would I have to wait to get a first appointment?
right now I'm booking out about 2 weeks.
That's excellent.
That
That is awesome. And I, underline that in lots of exclamation points and capital letters, man. 2 weeks is awesome. And if we get you busy enough, it might be longer. So, listeners, jump that shit, man. You finally get done at like what? 10?
Depends on the night, but I would say 9 o'clock
9
is
o'clock.
about as far as I can push it.
Yeah, it seems mighty reasonable to me. So you would take appointments like maybe a 6, 7, 8,
Yes.
something like that on a weekday evening.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do Saturdays?
I don't.
Good for
I'm trying to
you.
kind of do some self-care myself.
Excellent. Yay.
Friday afternoons. My full-time office closes about noon on Fridays, so I get some afternoons in there on Fridays. Yeah.
Good for you. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. Trauma therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Start off with exceptional children, and you end up doing EMDR with a wide variety of human beings, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And so in your office, private practice, I should say, more than your day job, you're doing actual first-person therapy with people, direct work.
Correct.
And how much of that is trauma work? Do you have any sense of that at all?
I would say trauma work of some type.
Yes.
Probably 90%.
Wow.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Because EMDR is pretty versatile.
Yes, it is.
It can be used with a lot of different things, and trauma is subjective. So, that doesn't mean that 90% is really, really heavy stuff, but it's still traumatic to that person.
Right.
So, yeah, I use it
You use it
about
for
90%. Yeah.
Wow. You get a first responder, and you make an appointment. Are you listening for something in that phone call, that conversation where you're setting things up? Are you listening for anything in particular?
I would say with my crisis training, with all the people that call in, what I'm listening to is this a safety concern right now?
The present, the right now. Good for you.
Yeah, I want to make sure that if I can't get them in for 2 weeks, do they need to go somewhere else now? So I'm listening for various cues, asking some of those questions and just trying to kind of feel that out.
You're looking for urgency.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find it?
Sometimes, yeah. So,
What do you do then?
just make sure that are they safe in the moment? Do they have a support system? Are there other people they can call? I usually do give the crisis hotline number out. If I can squeeze them in sooner somewhere, somehow, I try to do that.
Right.
But I think a lot of times, too, when people just know they've got this appointment, it's almost like you can hear the relief, like over the phone. Like, oh. And I do get that response, like, 2 weeks? Because I'm like, oh, man, I can't get you in for 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
And they're like, 2 more weeks is great, you know.
So, yeah, the way things work in the world, you're very lucky if you have to only wait 2 weeks. So you're listening for urgency. I love that a lot. Then you have your first appointment, and I'm wondering if you approach a first responder in a unique way, any different than you would any other trauma client that walked in the room.
I think I try to treat everybody pretty similar, except that most of the first responders that I've worked with are not really coming in wanting to be all touchy-feely with their emotions. So,
yeah, you got a shell you got to crack it.
Yeah. So, I think it's like with everybody, though. There's some rapport building and just assuring them of the confidentiality.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't want people to know they're coming in.
Build that trust.
So yeah, that's kind of what I do. But I don't know that it's any different.
It sounds like, though, you're conscious of triggering too much stuff right at first. So you, like Mark said, build trust, work on things just to make a connection with the person, and not touch the heavy stuff. Like Mark and I went 1.5 years before we actually got into the traumatic material.
Because I'm a big chicken shit. I'd done been down that path once, man. I didn't want to go it again. So.
And in general, my experience is probably very much like Vickie's, that's the way it is for all traumatic folks. Like thinking of all the women that I came in that I worked with who were rape survivors and incest survivors. If I had approached that material soon, like if I had made a point of, we need to address that.
Whoa, yeah, you'd send them flying out the door.
Exactly. I would watch the end of therapy happen right before my eyes.
Yeah.
So I learned that, fairly early, actually with children first, that, man, you just got to honor that stuff and be sensitive to how it comes up, and kind of like I'm working with this guy now who's not coming to me for trauma at all, because I don't do that anymore, but he's 22, he's got developmental disabilities, and I know something happened when he was 10 years old at school that was, as you well described it, traumatizing to him. And here we are 12 years later, and he's still walking around shaping his life around that event or series of events. And to try and bring it up, man, I watch that ass on fire flying in the opposite direction. That shit shuts down right now. I am not talking about
It's not
that.
safe.
Exactly. So I'm like, cool, dude, it's okay. When you bring it up, I'll go with you, but I'm not bringing it up. So there were 2 more times, one real recently, where he brought it up again, and I was able to ask a little bit, get a little bit of information, and then in about 3 or 4 interactions into that subject, he was like, done, I'm not comfortable, good, then we stop right here. And some of the women would tell me the same thing, and same thing with first responders. If I had somebody in the office that was there, for example, from a volunteer fire department, and I knew where we were going to end up, and he wanted to take 1.5 years to do it, that would be okay. Because at the end of the day, there's just a necessity to honor that set of events and how they affected the individual. Love that. Is there anything you make sure you don't do in that first appointment with the first responder?
I try not to make any kind of promises. I don't know if promises is the right word, but because some people think, well, how many sessions is it going to take?
Yes.
And so
Yeah, we get this done 3, right?
Right. And so I don't. Yeah. I don't ever want to make promises that then A, that it's not realistic, and B, then I don't want the person going, well, what's wrong with me because I didn't get fixed in 3 sessions. I think a lot of people that have come to me, what I'm noticing is, maybe because you're telling them, or I've got it on, my profiles and stuff, but I do have quite a few that say, I'm coming to you for EMDR. So they kind of come in with a mission, which is sometimes good and sometimes bad, because they're like, let's get in, let's get it done.
And I'm going to be 100% normal again.
Yes.
Right.
Wrong.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And you can't do that. Yeah, it takes a little time. Connection needs to be built. Trust needs to be built. Safety needs to be established. Then things can move forward. Yeah, first things first. Love that. Love that. And I also love what you said earlier about EMDR. Man, it works for everything. So we can work on A, B, and C before we even touch your traumatic material. If something's stuck that's, sleep, whatever it is, we can work on that stuff until you get ready to work on the traumatic material. It's all beneficial, all leads to the same positive outcome. I love that.
Yeah. Well, and I think EMDR is really in the client's control, because just because our last 4 sessions were heavy EMDR processing doesn't mean that the 5th time you come in that I'm going to be like, okay, it's processing again.
Yeah.
Because if they're not in a not in a headspace, or they just need to just sit and just kind of be for a bit,
That's
then I'm not going to push the EMDR processing.
I love that. That's excellent. There is, and it's one of the things that I think it's really important to emphasize. There can be pauses in the progress, and sometimes you have to rest in therapy to make the next thing happen. And there's a matter of just like gracefulness to me about paying attention to the client's timeline. They each have their own sense of timing, and to respond to that individual timing, that's kind of the point. That's kind of how you get the safety and everything else established to me. Love that.
I have a question for the both of you. For the Bodias.
Yes.
Do you ever find that you have a client come in where they're kind of wanting to rush it? Vickie's like, oh, yeah. How do you handle that expectation with them?
I try to be honest with them.
Okay.
It took how many years for you to get here? It's not just going to completely undo or reverse in 3 sessions. But also, I know it's not cheap.
Right.
And so, I'm mindful of that, and I help people get to a point where at least they feel like they're functioning better than when they first started. And maybe that's as far as they want to go initially. I typically, and I know that some practitioners do this differently, but I don't rush out and close clients right away.
Right.
So I tend to kind of leave the door open. Like, we don't have to schedule anything else right now, but I'm not going to close you if something comes up. And so that's happened. I've had people will reach out 6 to 8 months later and be like, I think I need to come back. So yeah, I'm kind of sensitive to where they're coming from.
So I had a friend that's and kind of took a break, and they were having some problems. And I said, reach out to your EMDR therapist. You need to get in there, do some work. How do I do that? Call them up. It's just like going to Jiffy Lube and getting your oil changed, man. This is mental maintenance. So if you haven't had a client around for a while, say 8 months, and suddenly they call you out of the blue, and you're like, oh, hey, Mark the Cop, how you doing? Hey, you got some time for me next week? Or, how's your cancellation? If you get a cancellation next couple of weeks, why don't you give me a call? And it's perfectly okay for that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's for the both of you?
Absolutely.
And that's where these are usually questions, because I'm like, I call myself the junior coach. David's a coach. You guys have been doing this for a while. So, I'm kind of, I don't know, the go-to person, people that want to step into therapy. I've been talking to a few people, and I'm like, oh, no, and whoever our referrals are, I give out. But they're kind of like, what if I don't go back? Are they going to be mad? It's like, no, dude. What if we don't get along? Are they going to be? No, that they don't care. And that's where, want to bring these out, like on this show, is that a lot of people have this phobia, that the psychiatrist or the counselor is sitting there in the chair and you're on the couch and they're taking notes. And I don't know why that's, I guess it's a stigma that's out there. It's kind of like when I was a used car dealer, everybody thought I wore a plaid jacket and a white belt and white shoes. It's kind of the stigma you got, right?
Herb Tarlick.
Yeah, exactly. Herb Tarlick from Debbie
Okay.
Garcia in Cincinnati, right? Showing our age, Greg. But a lot of them have that. It's our last couple of episodes. I just had said this is just like doing group therapy. Drag up a chair, listen. Episode 26 was just like a big group session. Do you agree with that, David?
Absolutely.
So this is about as close as it's going to get. And that's one thing I feel is powerful about this podcast is that, and thank you again so much for coming on, because I'm just like glued to everything you're saying right now, but is to get them comfortable and not be afraid and don't worry about the stigma. And trust me, boys and girls, I've been doing this since 2010. What's the year? 2023. I'm still FUBAR. And, matter of fact, I just called my therapist day before yesterday and said, hey, man, cancellation time. If you got anything open, get me in.
Right. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
The way I look at it is my role is, like I said, just to kind of help that person feel, even if it's just the slightest bit more at ease before they came in. So I'll just kind of share a story. I met with one individual one time. They were referred from actually their department, which was nice. There wasn't like a forced, they came voluntarily and everything. And then the person that made the referral said to me, well, when he got back, he said, it wasn't as bad as what I thought. And I thought, I'll take it. That's a win,
Absolutely.
It's always curious. What was your expectations? Did you guys ever ask that? What's your expectations coming in here? Is this what you thought? Because I thought David was like 6'8", 500 pounds, walking the door, and it's like, oh. That's not what I was expecting, but all right.
Well, I do think, and you guys would know this better than I would, but I think especially when a department is referring, sometimes there's this concern. And they're like, well, what are you going to report back, or what am I going to say? I'm going to be really careful about what I say. So the one thing I don't do, and I'm very clear on the first appointment, is I don't do any kind of fitness for duty stuff. I'm not going to tell them you can't go to work and you can go to work. My job is just to support you, listen to what's going on with you, see if we can figure out some things that's going to help.
Let's get you back on track there.
But that is the one thing I do make sure I'm clear, because, I don't, it's not up to me whether you go back to work.
Right.
So.
You don't have to say the department, but how many departments are you working with?
I don't really work with any officially. It's more like, hey, she's helped this person out. Why don't you go talk to her? Hey, can I get your number and pass it on to this person?
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's something that now, and thank God, a lot of the departments are starting to embrace. A lot of them are getting people involved, just getting them on their books. Hey, if we're setting you up for when the wheels come flying off the apple cart, you may be fine now, and that's great. Or you may never, ever need counseling services, but it's, especially doing this job now, I'm realizing more and more and more people that are reaching out and saying, oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. I share that with the group all the time. Right. I had one today that I shared with the guys, like, your podcast is effing awesome, but it's getting those people there and getting them established, that way when they're in crisis, we're not trying to find them something. So with the crisis side of it, so they call in. Do you have many first responders that call in?
Not really.
No.
Yeah, I think.
I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah. Especially not like the designated crisis line.
Right.
I think they call me or Miss me, but not the actual official crisis line. Which they could. It's anonymous. I shouldn't say this, but we don't have a tracing mechanism. Right. But yeah, I don't think they do.
I know I wouldn't.
Right. Exactly the reason that you said. Yeah. Do you find that trauma work ends up with the person and you focusing on a single thing? Or because so much of what we've talked about, as I know you've heard on the show, is the accumulation of trauma, the stuff that just one thing after another, after another, after another. And yet, I wonder sometimes, in the treatment itself, do you end up kind of focusing on one event or maybe one type of event? Like, I know Mark and Donnie both have had difficulties with dead bodies, with drownings. I had a volunteer fireman from up north years ago who anything that involved a kid was just really, really difficult for him to process. So do you find that it's like a single thing or mostly an accumulation thing?
There have been people that come in for a single incident, and that's all they want to work on. So I respect that.
Okay.
More often than not, even if they say I want to work on a single thing, everything else starts coming out too.
Yeah.
You know, it's typically what I see is there's a theme.
Oh.
You know, a belief system or something that has happened, and then all these other events, you know, kind of have fueled it or played a role.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, typically it's very rare that it's just been one event.
Very good, very good. It might start off in the person's mind as I'm going to go in and process this thing that happened. Well, you end up, as we've all found out, there's so much more in that bucket than just one thing that once you open the door, it's like a
Look
flood
out.
sometimes. Yeah, yeah. Do you find that there's any kind of trauma that has the deepest impact on a person?
Again, I think trauma is subjective to the person. So, you know, I think it's all unique. I think it would be unfair for me to go in and have assumptions about, well, this trauma shouldn't impact you that much.
Very good.
Because, you know, I've worked with people anywhere from sports-related trauma to abuse-related trauma, you know, to being on difficult calls and especially the kid calls.
Yeah.
You know, I've had the same experiences with those. And for me, it doesn't matter to me. It's whatever that person is struggling with. That's what I'm going to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds real good. In the process of therapy, do you find it like necessary for the individual to tell the story of the event or events? Like, I'm just going to tell you that just a little bit, or do I need to really tell the whole story?
I think that's the beauty of EMDR therapy.
Very good.
Is you don't have to tell me because you already know it up here. And so that's kind of what I tell people, and especially I'll tell them, it's like, I know you guys don't want to talk about your feelings, but you don't have to because it's up here. And so no, I mean, I don't need to know the details. If you give me maybe one word, then I'll tell you to kind of focus on that because you know the rest.
Right. And it's all connected, and stuff will start rolling out of your head that you're not even aware was in there.
Oh, yes. Let me tell you something about that.
And just by focusing on one word or one image, that's it. It's just a little sample of the overall thing. No long discourse on exactly the blow by blow. No, we don't need that. Yeah,
right.
Just give us
enough. Too many other people want to know that stuff. The media, I'm not the media.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't need all the juicy details.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or your cousin Eddie. Hey man, tell me about that. No. I'll tell you some stupid shit. I'm not gonna tell you that.
At Christmas.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Is there, maybe especially with first responders, is there some, like, as you're going through treatment, do you find, like, commonly or frequently, there's one part of the process that seems to be the hardest for the first responder?
I think the hardest that I've seen is them realizing that they're human. And when they do open the floodgates and the tears do come out, I'm not a sadist, but I'm like, yes. They may not be like that. They're like, what am I doing? Crying. And I'm like, no, I love it. Keep going, But I think that's some of the biggest things that I find is like, there's this like, I don't know, this assumption that they have to be hard and, and
that's beating your head from day one. Absolutely beating your head from day one.
You have to be hard to do the hard things. And so it connects to, I mean, I know this is true for Mark and for all the folks I work with, that yes, emotion does get touched, emotion does get released when you're in the office.
Mm-hmm. I tell people, don't be your own worst enemy in here.
Yeah.
Because if you hold yourself back, I usually, my spiel is, if you want to yell, if you want to cry, if you want to scream, if you want to cuss, I don't care. Now, if you start swinging punches at me, then we're going to have a problem.
I'm gonna fuck
But other
you
than
up.
that, right. But other than that, don't block it.
Mm-hmm.
Let the process happen.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then it's still stuck.
Right. You'll just end up back in the chair, and we'll start at this again. Very, very good. As it's going forward, do you ever get the feeling like you're fighting to keep the person in therapy?
Yeah, sometimes, because I think, people get to a point where maybe they are doing a little bit better. So they're good. They don't need to come back.
Yeah, I'm not a complete disaster. I'm just a little bit of a disaster, and I can deal with that. But it's a complete disaster. I want to get that healed.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that you have to heal it all, or you're going to become the complete disaster again. So don't act like you're going to go in for 10 sessions. Do we even get any work done at 10 sessions, you two? Seriously, can we get any work done?
I think sometimes.
Okay, sometimes.
Yeah. So,
Would that be, I'm a 10 of 10 with PTSD. So when I walk in the door, you're like, shit show. So, and I know, well, I'm in continuous therapy. I see a therapist and a psychiatrist. I'm so fucked. But I know that this is a constant process. And that's what I wanted to convey to people is like, well, am I ever going to get out of this? And the answer is yes. Yeah, sometimes you do graduate. Most times you do. But it depends, I think, a lot of how long have you been on the job. So are you seeing where some of your people that are coming in, I noticed about 8 years is where my shit started piling up. Is that where the majority of your first responders are? Is that 8 to 10 year mark? Or is it
I think it's all over the map. I would say the majority of the ones are waiting a little too long. And so they're not coming in until 20 plus years, and then they're coming in.
Yeah.
Or it's the opposite. It's kind of the two extremes.
Really?
Maybe they've not been in the job that long, and so now they're not even sure if they want to keep doing it. Or they've been in the job for 20 plus years and they're not sure if they want to keep doing it.
Right.
But yeah, I would say the majority are the latter, like 20 plus years.
See, Molly Hall said that to me my last session. She said, by the time they get to me, they should have been in here 10 years ago. By the time they get to me, they are completely just, I don't want to say done, but the bucket's overfull. Yeah. It's overflowing by, the gallons. Yes. It's like trying to bail out a sinking ship. But you can bail it out. There is healing. There is work, but you got to be willing to do the work. And it's heavy lifting. I mean, you've all listened to this show before when you've had Mr. Hat on, Donnie, and myself, and we all sit around this table going, oh, yeah, the work sucks. But, don't go into it with the attitude that I'm going to be the way I was, because PTSD physically changes your brain. You're going to be better. You're never going to be that person again. And that's another message that I want to get out is that I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago. I'm new and improved. I know, Greg, it's hard to believe, right?
Not really, but yes.
But getting good work done, and these two people at the table right now are two people that you're where you want to go in and start getting some work done, and be open, be honest, because you're not going to get anything done. There's a question. Have you had a client come in that were, they're kind of holding back, or they're not really, how do I say it? They just don't want to get to the heart of the matter. That's probably for both of you. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because again, it's not, I always kind of joke around during my first session and say most people don't wake up and be like, I'm going to try out therapy today.
Right.
It's not a fun experience. So it is hard. It's hard to kind of go to those areas that you thought you had contained.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know, you really didn't have them contained because they made your life a train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there are people that come in and very much hold back. And so I'm pretty blunt too. And sometimes I'll just be like, really? So what are we doing here?
Good.
But yeah, I mean, I think people only give you what they're ready to give you.
Right.
And sometimes it takes a while to get it all out.
Yeah.
Lots of work. That's why we call it the work, right, David?
It takes time, and I think what's happens so often is people feel like they put so much energy into making the first call.
Oh,
and it's like, oh my God, I just busted my ass to do this. I want to get as much of this done as possible, as quickly as possible. So how about if I just do this one thing? And I take care of that one thing in 6, 8 sessions, and then I'm done, right? Well, I think you find out in those 6 or 8 sessions that you're far from done. And sometimes I did get, every once in a while, these were mostly rape survivors who would come in and say, I'm going to see you for a while, and we're going to deal with this one thing. Okay. And then I'm going to take a break. And then I'm going to take, if it went well, I'm going to bring you something else. I had a woman whose chapters of abuse in her life were so well documented. She kept an incredible diary of all of the abuses done to her, starting age 6.
Good Lord.
And so she had decided before she came in that she couldn't handle presenting all that to me at the same time.
Okay.
That she could handle a piece of it. So I said, okay, you got multiple chapters. I'm cool with going whatever's going to help you the most right now.
Right.
Or if you got a priority, like that one thing just keeps coming back up, let's do that one. Or if you're like me, you're kind of linear, then you might want to go back to that very first thing when you were 6 that you've got some notes on. She actually had a notebook there, writing when she was 6 of what her stepdad had done to her.
Oh, good Lord.
Never told her mom till like age 9. When mom found the notebook, read what stepdad had been doing to her, that was another whole set of shit that blew up. So chapter by chapter. And I think sometimes it's like first responders kind of feel the same way. Like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to give you this thing that happened last Monday, or this thing that's happened 10 years ago I can't get out of my head, or, every time I go to home I just want to drink because I have this one thing that just, whatever. Cool. Or I'm ready to deal with this one thing, but the other 25,000 things are going to have to wait. Okay, like Vickie's saying, there's so much sensitivity and respect that needs to be given to the individual and the traumatic material the individual's carrying around. Like, we know once you touch it, it's going to hurt, and stuff's going to happen. And it may happen for 3 minutes or 3 hours or 3 weeks, or we don't know. But we have a way of processing it through so that it doesn't have to harm you over and over and over again. That's what EMDR is for. So, very much like Vickie's saying, for all of those who are listening and considering therapy, if you got a shit ton of stuff to bring in the door, it's cool. Bring it all in. And we won't make you deal with any part of it. If you spend the next 18 months not talking about the car full of shit you have out in the front of the office, that's okay. Nobody's rushing you, man. It's your timetable. It's your shit that you have to resolve. We're here to help you do it your way. Period. Makes
well
sense?
said.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the 6-year-old referring back to is a emotional backpack.
Yes.
Basically carrying that backpack, which everybody is carrying.
Yes.
And over the course of their time, that 6-year-old is packing that backpack with emotions, shoving it down in the backpack, carrying it forward. And then it's your job is to unpack that backpack one piece at a time But it seems like when you're pulling one piece out, is it bringing up other pieces to put back in?
Exactly.
So I think, as our first responders and stuff, as anybody trudge forward, I think we're all carrying emotional backpacks with us. Is how full is that backpack? Nobody knows until it comes to that point. It's too heavy for me to carry, and that's when they need to reach out to both of you to help unpack their backpack.
Exactly right. And what we try and do is be sensitive to which thing comes out first.
Yes.
We don't want to just pick up the backpack or rip it off your back and dump it out there on the floor for us to look at. Wow, that shit, man.
Oh, yeah. Hey, there's my trapper keeper. Yeah, I didn't know that.
You are fucked up. No, it's a tad more graceful than that.
Yes.
You know. Wow, that's good shit.
Well, let me add something to the backpack.
Please do.
So I think it's important to point out that, especially with first responders, what's in your backpack is not always job related.
Right.
Yes.
Because every person
yes.
was also 6 years old at one point in time and could have had shit that was already in their backpack before they became a first responder.
Yes.
And so it really is kind of being mindful to all that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, but we brought this up in an earlier episode. That what are you bringing into training?
Right.
Why do you want to be the police? You know, and as Kelly said in her episode, well, you know, she was a young girl, and you know, the police were always very kind to her, and she said that's something I wanted to do. You know, and several other people, you know, I want to be the police because I want to be the big protector because there was no one there for me, so I want to be that person for someone else. So then you come in with that childhood trauma. It's unresolved. You don't know. I know, like for me, my story, I go, nah, I'm not going to therapy. That means you're nuts. Yeah, I didn't know how fucked up I was. But then once you get in, you start unpacking all that. I called it my Pandora's box because it was super full. No, it was overflowing when by the time I got to David. When suicide becomes, this sounds pretty fucking good because I'm in this much pain. Yeah. That's where you need to start thinking. That's what my wake up call was that, yeah, this ain't right. Something's wrong. I got to fix something, you know. But when you're dealing with a first responder, Vickie, and seeing that starting to unpack, what's your feelings on that? You have that sense of, yes.
Yeah, I mean, because again, you've got it packed in there thinking you've got it all contained, and it really isn't. You know, your papers are falling all over the place, and you know, maybe there's rotten food in there, like, you know, creating some issues. So yeah, when you're ready to start unpacking it, that's when like the real progress can start happening.
It gets exciting. It really does.
And like I said, I mean, when you cry, yes.
I got tears.
Yes. So,
And rage.
Oh, wow.
Well, emotion in general,
yes,
because
exactly.
it's so, you disconnect because it's easier that way.
Yeah.
Easier. Not really easier, but you think it is.
Yeah.
And so when you can tap into it, when I can tap into it, and it's there, then I know, yes,
Yeah.
you know.
That's the vein you wanted to hit. Yeah. Really cool.
Donnie, time to key the music.
May your days and nights find you strong and safe. May you take your place as your family's face. As you do the shit that we won't do. As you embrace the risk you must go through. May you grow in strength and heal and find your heart, your soul, and your mind. You look at your life and grin. You have a home, the shield within.